This episode includes discussions about grief, loss, and personal trauma. These topics may be sensitive or triggering for some listeners. Please take care while listening and reach out for support if needed.
For the haters, come on, do it now or later. It don't matter what your name is, share your story, we'll be waiting. For the haters, whoa.
Hi.
Hey. This is exciting.
Yeah, this is exciting. Wow.
You're doing it. Look at your thing.
I know. It's crazy. Who would have known? 5 years later, and here we are.
I did not think I would be here.
All right. What's up, everyone, and welcome back to For the Haters podcast. It feels good to say that. I am so excited to be back. I just want to take a moment to thank everyone who has been here from the beginning. Anyone that's here that's new, welcome. This platform was created out of pure passion and purpose, and I'm just really excited to be back here. And if I continue to talk about anything else, I'll get too emotional before we even get into this week's episode. Yeah, so here we go. Let's kick things off. I am trying some new things and trying to structure these episodes a little differently. So I'm going to go ahead and give a little bit of an intro for Lindsey here, who's sitting. Today's story is one of fear, resilience, and the incredible strength it takes to navigate the unexpected. Our guest Lindsey and her husband Joe were preparing to welcome their baby in August of 2023 when what was supposed to be a relaxing Babymoon in Turks and Caicos in May turned into the most terrifying experience of their lives. At just 27 weeks, Lindsey suffered a sudden placenta abruption and had to undergo an emergency C-section, delivering their daughter Logan Marie at only 2 pounds, 9 ounces. With limited medical resources on the island, Joe worked against the clock to make sure that Logan got back to the U.S., where she could receive the care that she desperately needed. Now, nearly 2 years later, Logan is thriving, but the journey through a traumatic birth, NICU survival, and the emotional aftermath has left a lasting impact. Today, Lindsey is here to share the raw emotions of that experience, what it felt like in those terrifying moments, the NICU days, and how she and Joe have processed it all as Logan continues to grow. Let's get into it. Hello, Lindsey, and welcome to For the Haters. I think that it's important to let people know we know each other, right? Not everyone that comes on For the Haters is someone from my personal life, and so I'm so thankful to have you as my first guest.
Excited to be here.
Lindsey and I went to college together, so we have lived quite a life together.
Many lives.
Yeah.
We're like cats.
You could say that. All right, let's get into it. Lindsey, thank you for being here. Can you start by just telling us a little bit about your pregnancy leading up to the trip? Had there been any complications before anything happened?
So Logan's our second. My first pregnancy was super easy. Everything was great. Logan was the same. I felt great. Things were moving, and we did the genetic testing, we did all the things, and I was just excited for the 20-week scan, excited for our trip. I did know that I had a slight previa, but they were like, it's fine, it moves, no big deal, we'll scan you at 32 weeks.
And then what was the decision, just around the trip, the excitement around the trip, right?
We were just really excited to go.
I mean, Babymoons are normal.
They
right?
are.
Yeah. Everyone plans them. Everyone is looking forward to, getting away.
I've never relaxed more in my life until I didn't.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it was nice to just be away, be with Joe, go to dinner, eat a hot meal when it was hot and a cold meal when it was cold, and not have Cole interrupt us the whole time. And that was really wonderful. And we did that.
And how long were you in Turks before you noticed something was wrong?
So we got there Saturday. My first episode was Tuesday.
You got there Saturday, and
I woke up and I had my first, we'll say, event with placenta previa. And an event is considered anything with bleeding.
Mm-hmm.
So we went to the hospital. My bleeding had stopped, but they were like, you really should get this shot to help with her lungs. So I did 4 shots every 12 hours. And then the next day they discharged us to go back to the hotel to be on bed rest.
What was it that triggered you needing to go to the hospital? Like, what were you like, oh, like something's wrong?
I mean, there was blood in the bed. Like I woke up and it was like, there was just very obviously something was wrong. So it's, yeah, I mean, without getting in like too much detail to spare
The graphics of it.
Yeah, it was very graphic. And it was an absolute need to go to the hospital. And so I'm glad we did that. You know, we were monitored. We got an ultrasound. Everything looked perfect, but they were like, your placenta is something that's your placenta is perfect and it's working, but it's like not in the best spot. Mm-hmm. And nobody had told me that it was as serious as it was.
Yeah. And you came home, or you came back to the hotel. Mm-hmm. You were on bed rest. Mm-hmm. And then what brought you back? How long till you went back?
So we did nothing on Wednesday and Thursday all day. I just laid in the hotel room, did nothing. And then Thursday night I was like, Joe, let's go to dinner in the hotel restaurant. It's like 50 feet away. We can see it from our room. We're not really going anywhere. Mm-hmm. And as I say this now, it's probably like, that's not bed rest. Yeah, no, I know. But so we made an 8:30 reservation. I'm like, let's just see if we have to cancel it. Fine. So we got dressed. I was in this really cute pink romper, RIP. And we go to dinner. There's one other family out there. They ended up leaving.
You're fine.
And it was just Joe and I. Mm-hmm. And so we're eating, we're relaxing. And he was like, I'm really glad we did this. It was really nice to get out of the room. It's like famous last words, right? And so within 5 minutes, I'm like, something's wrong. Something's really, really wrong. And it was just like a gush. Mm-hmm. And I didn't want to ruin their chair. So I sat on the tile floor.
Such a people pleaser.
So I was on the floor, and Joe, because it had been the second time, Joe told them to call an ambulance. He ran to get our passports. There are not ambulances, so the hotel had to drive us in the car, towels all around me. The concierge, Jamie, he is like my guardian angel in all of this. He was calling the hotel, or calling the hospital, making sure there was a bed for us, and he was flying down the road, and we were right into the hospital. And they had known me because I was there 2 days before.
It was 2 days before.
Yeah, basically.
And then you get to the hospital and they tell you, you need to have an emergency C-section. And like what automatically just goes through your mind?
Well, it wasn't even there yet. They were basically like, this is your second event in 4 days.
Oh, wow.
And you're not leaving this hospital. You're either leaving on a jet to get you back to the US, like a medical jet, mm-hmm. or you're having the baby here. And we're just not sure where we're at. So they ran all these tests on me. And they were like, you need to get out. Like, you need to go get on a plane. And so Joe spent all this time, poor Joe, he scheduled an air evac for me to Miami for 10 a.m. the next day. At this point, it was like maybe 11. Mm-hmm. They wanted $70,000 out of pocket. And I'm like, I guess I put a couple credit cards together. I don't know.
Yeah.
I have my work card. Figured out later. I don't know.
Expenses at an
this is like my life. Like at this point, I'm like, we just have to get back to the US. And so as he was scheduling it, the Dr. Martinborough looked at Joe and was like, it's not. Mm-hmm. The baby's heart rate's dropping. We're taking the baby. And I'm like, taking the baby where? The baby's, where are we going? Yeah. And I did not process it. She goes, we're doing a C-section. And I said, I don't know what you're saying.
Oh,
to
so
me.
like this whole time, it wasn't even like in your mind that you could possibly be giving birth or having a baby. It was just
No.
like, oh, we're just dealing with a medical condition.
Like, I got to get back to the US.
Yeah.
No, I did not. And I think it was because I was so numb and scared that it was like, I'm not having a baby here.
Yeah.
Why would I have a baby here? I don't live here.
I don't live here.
I don't.
And so like from there, they tell you you're going to have a C-section. Logan comes, right? Like that's it. Where's Joe? Joe's still just trying to plan things, trying to get things set up.
Yeah. So they started prepping me for surgery. And the way it works in Turks is that people aren't just there. They have to go pick them up because it was late. Like they don't schedule C-sections for midnight. So they had to go pick up everybody in the hospital who works there. Meanwhile,
Like drive around town.
yeah, to pick people up.
Can you set the scene of this hospital? Because when you like, is it like a minute clinic kind of style, or does it feel like a hospital?
It feels like a hospital, but it's very, very small. Like we always compare it to like kind of just like a middle of nowhere. There's 4 beds in the ER, if that gives you any indication. So it's very, very small. There's one like birthing room, one maternity room, I guess. And so, yeah, it's a very, very small hospital. And so when they needed to wheel me back, the doctor actually wheeled me back to the OR, and the Dr. Martinborough put in my IV, and she wheeled me back to surgery. And Joe's back in the maternity ward, just waiting. He couldn't be with me. And so, they wheeled me back, and everybody came in. They did the C-section, and they were like, "Oh, the baby's here." And I'm like, "What is it? We didn't even know what we were having." And they're like, "It's a girl." And I heard her make some noises. I'm like, "Okay, this is still not real." Like, but the anesthesia feels nice, I guess. And so I'm like, "Oh, Joe's going to be so happy. He has the daughter." Not thinking like he has a daughter in another country and she's 2.5 pounds.
And 27
weeks.
Yeah, 27 weeks old.
Yeah. So Joe has a different perspective, but I'm back there. They're stitching me up. At this point, I know I'm good. And there was a real fear because I lost so much blood. They actually only had 2 units of my blood on the island, and they didn't know if I would need a blood transfusion. They didn't know what I would need, and thank goodness I didn't. But it could have been really, really bad. And so Joe's back in the maternity ward by himself, and they bring Logan back in a Ziploc bag, and they're like, "Daddy, do you want to meet your daughter?" And he's like, "I do, but how's my wife?"
Yeah.
And the pediatrician was like, "I don't know. I just took the baby and had to get out of there because she, needs help." And so he's like, "Okay, so now I have a 2-year-old at home. I don't know about my wife. And I have that little thing in the Ziploc bag." And I'm in Turks Caicos.
Yeah. And you had seen Logan yet at that point before once they brought her out?
No. I mean, they walked by with her, but it was like very swift.
Quick. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, and so then they wheeled me back, and I was like, "Joe, we're fine. We're going to be okay. Like, I'm okay. Now we focus on her. She is number 1.
But you also weren't okay, right? Like you ended up being okay, but I want to make sure that the severity of your condition is also like, I feel like you can overlook that quite often just because now you're okay. Logie's okay, but like you could have died, but you dying was a very likely chance.
Yeah. I've heard from other people after hearing my story. They're like, the fact that you even survived a placenta abruption, your daughter survived, and that you were in another country, like that is incredible. And it's not lost on us that is like that. It's hard to talk about because it's like, you feel like you put yourself in that position. But what we've learned is that abruption was going to happen regardless that week. Like I could have been driving with our kids. I could have been doing anything. We ended up having incredible medical care. We had an incredible experience there. So maybe it was supposed to work out that way. It could have been worse, but yeah, it was very, very dangerous.
Do you remember what it was like? Well, obviously, what was it like the first time that you did get to see her? Were you in Turks still? Did you get to see her before, you guys had to be separated?
So I couldn't walk for like a day because I had like this anesthesia or whatever. She was in a little NICU closet like down the hall. So Joe would go see her, and then he would like take videos and pictures and bring them back, and I would see them. Eventually I did get to go and see her, and it's so weird to think about it now and like saying it, you always think about your first impressions. And I was like, I don't even want her to look at me because she has to be so mad at me, like for putting her in this position. Yeah. And she, like, I can't believe that I did this, that I like could not look at her. Yeah. And I would just be like, how's she doing? Like, can you just tell me the status? Because there was so much guilt that it was like hard. I couldn't believe that I put her, like, that I was the reason that she was there. Yeah. That was in my head. Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so, I just didn't want her to look at me. It's so sad now. But yeah, no, it was really hard. It's really hard to like see your decisions and how they affect other people. And knowing now that would have happened regardless. Yeah. But it's still, at the time I didn't know.
Yeah. And we'll definitely talk more about the emotional aspect, but you're in Turks, you're at a level 2 ICU. Where's Joe? What's Joe doing? Like, what, what's next, right? Like you can't stay there. You can't get the care that you guys need.
So they basically were like, she's stable, but if anything else happens, we don't have the facilities for it. Like we can keep her this way for a couple of days, but you need to get her off the island. If anything happens with her heart, if anything happens with anything other than this, like we're just not equipped. And so she was born at 1 a.m. Joe got to work. He literally called the hotel. They brought notepads and all the stuff he had. I mean, I have it with me, his like notepad of all the things. And he basically called everybody. He called our credit card because we have air evac, and they said, we would just take the limit.
I didn't even know credit cards had that.
So we have a travel card. Yeah. And I had just noted in my Googling of like, how do we get out of here? Because we had a couple of days to be like, am I getting air evac'd out of here? I didn't think I was having a baby. Yeah. So I thought it was me. But our card had up to 100,000 in air evac. So I'm like, okay, well, maybe call them, see what the options are. And they're like, well, we could just take the limit off your credit card. And I said, this sounds insane. I don't even know I do know what a NICU flight costs now.
Yeah. At that point, you didn't.
I didn't.
Yeah.
And so I was like, okay, you need to call Aetna, our insurance carrier. And you need to say where we're at, and we need to get this approved, and we need to have them help us. Because at that point, Turks they're not like navigating, getting us out of there. They're basically like, here's a paper with all these logos that you can call, and good luck. But like, you need to get her out of here. And we're like, oh, is that okay?
Yeah. And my first thought is like, you can't blame them. Do they not have the resources? Right. No. Like it's, they're doing their best there.
We're such a liability. I'm sure that they were like, please get out.
Please get out.
Get these people out of here. So Joe called Aetna, and they talked to the doctors there, and they approved a transport. And so they connected us with this air evac out of Lehigh, which is crazy because it's like an hour from us. And they were going back and forth. We were going to be transferred to Nicholas Children's in Miami, which would have been complicated with our 2-year-old back in Philadelphia area and us in Miami for however long. But it was the option we had. And like, what else do you do? Yeah. So we were going forward with that. And then the girl called Joe, and she was like, why aren't you going to CHOP, Children's Hospital of Philadelphia? Like, why aren't you going there? And he's like, can I? Is that an option? And she's like, well, if you call CHOP and get them to agree, they will come get her and they'll bring her back. And I don't think he could have dialed a number fast enough. You know, and so
Go, Joe, go.
Go, Joe. Go. So at this point, we already had a medical transport approved.
Mm-hmm.
And that was like one of the bigger hurdles. So my husband, Joe, calls the front desk of the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia. And the poor secretary, she was probably like, what? He gets connected to the critical NICU transport, and which is a physician to physician line. And they're like, I'm sorry, you're Doctor Who from where? And he's like, I'm the dad. You're going to listen to me. And so he set up a Teams invite for the doctors at CHOP and the doctors in Turks. And they connected, and CHOP approved her. And this was the day she was born. So she was born at 1 a.m. She was probably approved by CHOP by like 2 or 3 p.m. Like, nobody works harder than Joe Offner in a situation like this.
Yeah.
And so they were scheduled for the next day to come. And then Joe spent the rest of his day having Jamie, the concierge, drive him around, getting her birth certificate and all of the other things.
How does one even think to do that, right? Like, in this pure chaos of like health concerns, how does one even remember that all of these things are going to be needed in the future?
People helped us. The hospital was like, here's the paperwork. It takes 5 weeks to get a birth certificate. And we're like, okay, but how do we even get her into the US? Like, it's like a stolen baby. She doesn't have any identity. So we had to get her some type of identity.
Yeah.
And so, Jamie knew somebody at the consulate or whatever it's called there. And he marched Joe up to the front of the line, and we had 3 copies of her birth certificate, like by 5 p.m. the day she was born. It is colorful. It has a stamp.
So Logan is a dual citizen.
She's not.
She's not?
No.
I thought she
No.
Really?
Yeah, I think she has to like live there 6 months out of the year.
Okay. So she's not.
She's not. I think she can be, but
at some point.
Yeah, you have to wait till a certain age, and you have to live there a certain time of the year. It's a British overseas territory, so they don't have what we have,
like the birthright, birthrights. Okay, but you at this time, do you still think that you're going with her, or do you know that you're not?
So when they talked to CHOP, CHOP was trying to organize a time, so they called back and they said, we need to know the weight of each person that's going, and so and who's going, because they needed like their information. So Joe gave them my information, and CHOP was like, no, she had a C-section yesterday, or like at this point it was today. It was going to be yesterday because they were going to come the next day on Saturday, and so I was not approved. And which was fine. And Joe's like, well, I'm not going if you're not going. I said, I will take a boat. Like, I will row home. You are going with her, and give them your weight. Yeah. Like, I'll figure it out.
Yeah.
I'm fine now. We need to get her home. And if I can't, like, she's not going alone.
Yeah.
So you're going. And so, they were supposed to come the next day on Saturday, which was May 13th. And then I think the wrong plane was sent. So it got delayed until Sunday, which was Mother's Day. And so we waited around basically all day to figure out what time they were coming. And we finally heard like late Saturday night, like 8:00 Saturday night, that they were coming at 3:15 on Sunday. And the last flight out for me was at 3. So I was like, I am not getting on that plane if I don't know that they're going to land. And Joe's like, you're getting on the plane. It's the last one.
How long of a flight is it?
It's like 3 hours.
Okay.
Like 3 to 3.5 hours.
So you're getting on a commercial flight.
2 days after a C-section. I shouldn't have even been technically discharged, but they were like, they're the only direct flights on the weekends. So my alternative was flying to Miami, an 8-hour layover, and then flying up to Philly, which they're like,
just go.
What's one day?
Just get on the plane.
Please get off this island.
So then you made it home in Philly on Mother's Day. which, I mean, I guess what better way?
I couldn't have had a better Mother's Day.
And mind you, in all of this, I guess you were supposed to be away. How long were you supposed to be away until?
Until Saturday, the day before.
And you still have a 2-year-old, right, at home. But thankfully, I mean, you both have wonderful families, so that they were able to step in. But, you know, what is that feeling like when you finally make it into the States and you finally make it into the care of like Chop, right? Like, is there relief? Is there more concern? Like, because now you have the reality of what's setting in.
So it's interesting with us. We were immediately relieved the second that Chop landed. Mm-hmm. So Joe actually, because he's a nerd, he was tracking the flight on the way down. So I was sitting on the plane on the runway about to take off, and I could see that they were like minutes from landing. Because, you take off at 3, but you don't really take off until 3:15.
Yeah.
So I knew that they were like landing as I was taking off. And I forgot the question.
Like, what does that feel like, right? Like, do you get relief when you finally, yeah.
So when I was in the air, Joe sent me a picture of Chop being in there with all their equipment. And that's when I was like sobbing in the plane. Like, thank goodness.
Was the person next to you like, what is wrong with this person?
Well, she, bless her heart. I got the last seat on the plane when I booked it, and it was first class. Thank goodness. This woman steps over me and she goes, "You would not believe the week I had." And I was like, "You're going to need the world's strongest drink for me to tell you about the week that I just had."
I wonder, you obviously like told her?
Yeah.
I wonder if she thinks about you. I would.
Maybe.
But like, I mean, great. That's a great example of you never know the day that day someone is having. Right.
We both looked hungover for very different reasons. And meanwhile, I'm just like a total mess. But like the feeling, there was so much relief in knowing that Chop was landing, but the feeling of taking off and leaving my my fragile little thing and my husband on an island, like, I don't know how to describe that feeling. I think I just like turned my brain off and was like, I got to get home to Cole. Joe has got it handled. Chop is there.
So you went home from the airport?
Yeah. So Joe took the flight with her. They cleared the airspace in Philadelphia because it's a medical jet. Like, you don't circle, you just land. They landed. Chop 4 was there, and they went right to Penn, which is Chop's level 3 NICU. I flew home to Newark because they didn't have a direct flight to Philly, and my sister-in-law and brother-in-law picked me up.
You didn't have to go like back to the hospital yourself?
I had to go see my OB
like just after.
Tuesday or something that week.
Yeah. And then, you land and then your NICU journey begins.
So this is where it gets like, I mean, at this point, we were the happiest people on the planet to have our kid in the NICU, right? Like, we're the only people that are like, thank God our kid's in the NICU.
Yeah.
Thank goodness. Where else would I want her other than here? And so Joe had been in there that night. He was there until like she got settled, and then he Ubered home, and we both went the next day. So the first time I went to the NICU was May 15th. And I walk in and they're like, "How are you walking?"
Like, why are you walking?
Why are you walking?
Yeah.
I'm like, well, I don't know.
No one told me otherwise.
I technically should have been discharged from the hospital like that day.
Yeah.
And they're like, "How are you okay?" I'm like, "I'm truly not."
Yeah. Like, still just on pure adrenaline.
Yeah. No, yeah. It was all of that. But we get to the NICU and they're giving, it's like word vomit in my face because there's so much information of like, she's doing this, she's doing this. I'm like, I don't know what any of these words mean. And there's so much information. And I feel like a lot of people wanted to see who the mom was who had a baby in Turks. So they were like, "I heard about your story." I'm like, yeah, who didn't?
Like, everyone did.
I'm sure everyone in this NICU knew about her last night when the flight team came in with her. I mean,
and you guys, I don't want to like talk too much because I want to get to the next part, but you guys made like a relationship with your flight team, and like that was a huge impact for you as well. Like, people, taking off time just to be able to help you. It was like a personal choice. It wasn't, you know, just a job, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the flight had to be rescheduled. So there was a original team and then the next team. And we, you know, Joe, I actually never have met them. Joe has met the flight team.
Yeah.
I didn't get to meet them. But they did an interview and they're like the most wonderful people. And they like talked to Logan and took care of her. I was going to tell the ventilator story.
Go for it. Tell the ventilator story.
My poor husband. It's funny now. It was not funny then.
Yeah, things seem lighthearted now because we're 2 years from it,
Yes.
right?
And she's
Logan's about to be 2, and we'll talk about that. So,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah. So the first day in the NICU after we walked in, they're like, "Do you want to hold her?" Because I had not held her yet. And I said, "You know what, Joe, you hold her. You got us here. I can hold her tomorrow, but like you deserve to have this." So in the NICU, they do kangaroo care, skin to skin. So it helps like regulate their body temperature and their blood, like all the things, their heart rate when they're close to their parents. And so Joe like unbuttons his shirt or takes it off and they put this robe over him. And Logan's like snuggled in. She's holding my hand. All of a sudden he looks on and he goes, "Something just happened." And she like retched a little. My daughter ripped out her own ventilator. She self-extubated herself and they called a code, I think code blue. It was like ants marching.
Yeah.
There was like all of a sudden 30 people in this bay. Joe's without a shirt. And everyone's working on Logan. And all the doctors are coming up to us and they're like, "Hi, I'm Dr. So-and-so." And Joe, of course, is like, "Hi, I'm Joe. I'm the father. I usually have a shirt on. I'll be wearing one tomorrow." Never holding her again.
Like pure just panic.
Yeah, he's like, "Is she trying to kill me?" like my nerves.
Yeah.
It's too much. But yeah, that was our first day in the NICU. It was so eventful.
And she kept it. They kept it out.
Yeah, they were like, "We were going to do this tomorrow in a safe and
environment.
sanitary setting," and she just right out.
She said, "Get this thing off me."
Yeah, that's how she lives her life. Does whatever
Currently,
she
yeah. So just, you know, the NICU journey is something that people can relate to, right? It's not something people are a stranger to. And so during that, right, what do you feel like those hardest moments might have been? Outside of the big picture of things, right? Like you're in the NICU now. She was in the NICU for 4 months.
It was like 73 days.
3 months.
3 months-ish. So Logan did really well in the NICU. She, in general, gained weight. There were some days where we had a little bit of, you know, it's one step forward, two steps forward, one step back. And so really most days were like decent for her, but it just takes time to get them to where they need to go. Some of my worst days in the NICU, she was in a bay with 7 other babies. There's 8 of them total. And sometimes the other babies were not doing well. And so when you're sitting there holding your baby and you're seeing all the other babies like not doing well, their parents aren't there. And that's a whole other thing because, you know, Logan was in the NICU for 10 weeks. You've talked about Leah's leave, 4 weeks.
Yeah.
Parents have to go back to work. And it's like, do you take your leave right away or do you save it till when they come home? Like, so at first I was like, why are there no other parents here? They have to work and they would come at night. And like, that's exhausting too. Luckily, Joe and I work for really big companies where we were able to take the time. But some of the really, really hard days were when the other babies were like not doing well. And there was just one day where doctors had to rush in. I had to move and they were like performing all these things. And I just remember like not being okay for a very long time and just thinking, did Logan have a day like that? And I wasn't here. It's just, there's no words for the NICU life. It is draining.
What do conversations with you and Joe look like? Right? Like, do you guys have conversations that are speaking about your feelings of it? Or is it, we're literally not talking about this until we're through it?
we would talk about it a lot and be like, what happened? It was a lot of denial of like, did that really?
Are we here?
What happened?
Is that a dream?
But we had really different experiences in the NICU. Like, I was happy she was there, but I was done. Like, we were commuting an hour probably each way. And I was pumping and I was healing from a C-section. And by 70 something days in, I was like, I'm done.
Mm-hmm.
I'm done. I was always the one that was like, let's try to, wean her from the CPAP a little bit. Let's try to push her just a little bit to see.
She can handle it.
She can handle it.
Yeah.
And sometimes it worked and sometimes it didn't. And that's fine. Whereas Joe was like, she lives here now. This is the safest place for her.
Mm-hmm.
She can be in the NICU. I feel safe here. She's hooked up to monitors and she's never coming home. And he was just like he's like, she's not safer on us. Like, she's safer here. And so
the constant just trauma of tube being pulled out is running through Joe's head.
Joe's like, I don't need her to pull any of that when we're at home.
Yeah.
So yeah, we definitely talked about that. Me being like, I'm done. I can't do it anymore. And him saying, I just think she should stay a little bit longer. And I'm like, no.
What would you say to a family that's in the NICU journey right now, right? Like, what's a word of advice specifically to that you think that you would give?
I would say deep breaths, one day at a time. It feels all consuming right now. Your world has grinded to a halt, whereas the rest of the world is going on. And it's all consuming right now, but it will feel like a blip in time. You will get past this, and the farther it gets away, the more it's like, that wasn't so bad. That's not my word of advice to people, but like, it really does, as time goes on, your body.
I'm laughing because
itself.
Lindsay just made a face. I forgot that some people aren't going to be watching and just listening, but Lindsay just made a face. That's why I'm not insensitive to what you just said.
Yeah.
And so, and now, Logan is turning 2 in May, which is where does time go? Like, how does it feel looking at her now, right? Like, do you recognize that growth every day? Is it something you're constantly it's just in her when you look at her?
She is definitely still the child that escaped my body very quickly in Turks and Caicos. You cannot tame her. You cannot, nothing is going to stop this girl. When Joe and I look at her, like, she'll do something and I'm like, remember when she was on a ventilator a year and a half ago? She just threw a shoe at your head. Like, she's crazy. Yeah. She goes head first down the slide. And I'm like, no, that's, you're fragile still, right? Like, she's just not.
And is there no concern of right now? There's no concern of any type of long-term medical, like.
No, I mean, she was on breathing support for 8 weeks. And so she has it's called BPD something. It's like a diagnosis for her lungs. Mm-hmm. She's super susceptible to like asthma and lung conditions and things like that. But at this point now, everything else has healed itself. And she's gotten the boot from.
She just wanted a story. She just wanted.
I know. She's so like.
How do you think that this experience has changed you, not only as a mom but as a person?
Certainly as a mom, I ask more questions. Like, I wish I would have asked more questions when I was pregnant. And so with Logan, it was a lot of, I'm not going to accept an answer until I understand it. And our doctors were amazing and they would always walk me through it. But I felt like when I was pregnant and not asking the questions about Previa, that I would be doing a disservice to them. And like, I wouldn't have learned my lesson if I didn't say, I don't understand what this means. What are long-term effects? What can we do about it to prevent anything else? And so I connected her with like every single service she could possibly have. And I was fine when they were like, she doesn't need it. She doesn't need it. And I'm like, great, that's fine. I just wanted to check it out. And so certainly as a mom, that's changed me. I feel like I'm a little bit more relaxed. Like, what could possibly be worse? So, sometimes it helps to have a situation like this because it just puts your mind into perspective a little bit of what actually matters. Like the crumbs on the floor, I used to panic about it, and now I'm like, the dog will get it, I think.
Yeah.
And then I guess
or Cole.
Well, Logan's like a floor snack gal, so she just picks it up. I'm like, you're in the NICU. Like, shouldn't I be?
You would think that, I guess, some people would be more try to be more protective over something that was seen as so fragile. But I guess, like you said, there's no taming that child.
No, and she goes to daycare now, and they like lick each other. So I can't stop her from floor snacks, and I can't. It's just so out of my control, and I just feel like I can't obsess about it, or I'll go crazy.
Yeah. Do you still feel like you are processing the trauma? I know that we've had a lot of conversations around it, and I've seen you at different stages of it.
Mm-hmm.
I think that the stage that you're at now is completely different than the stage you were a year ago.
Yeah.
I guess also secondary to that is, what do those kind of look like, right? Like, where were those hurdles?
Mm-hmm.
What were those biggest hurdles to get over?
So in the beginning, it was Joe and I could not relax. Like I don't remember a lot of what happened. I think that's my brain like protecting me from it.
Mm-hmm.
But Joe and I got a chance to go away for a wedding when Logan was still in the NICU. The NICU was like, you need to go fill up your cup. Like Joe was in the wedding. It was one of his best friends. And we went up a day early. We went to dinner, and Joe and I were sitting there, and we both were like gripping the chair. And I was like, I'm waiting for something bad to happen. He goes, we should be so relaxed right now. And I can't, like, we could not relax for a very long time. And so that was like really, really hard in the beginning, because I was constantly like, if you had checked my cortisol levels, I probably like should have been hospitalized. Like, it just was so fight or flight at that point. And then once she got home, there was a whole other level of fear and panic, because, she used to be hooked up to monitors, and now I don't know what her CO2 levels are at, and I don't know where all these things are. And then I really had to start, once she got better, I had to really start processing the trauma. And I did really intense, like I was diagnosed with PTSD. I went through really intense like CBT therapy, cognitive behavioral therapy, which helped retrain my brain, because I was just blaming myself. Like, I went to therapy, and she asked me what my goal was. It was being able to forgive myself for what happened to her. And that's like a really hard thing. I didn't think I'd ever get to that point. It's taken a lot of work to get there. I feel like I probably ate too much, drank too much, and just kind of like didn't care about a lot of things for a while. And I've really just had to take care of myself lately. And I think that's like the journey I'm on now, is kind of picking myself back up together and moving forward, because she's not stopping. So I got to get it together and chase after her. But yeah, it's been a lot, and Joe's gone to therapy, and he's worked through it all too. So we've been doing it together, and it's been really helpful.
Yeah, it's interesting as a friend from the outside perspective too, because you feel picture your friend texting you and being like, well, just had my baby at 27 weeks. And it's like, who are you concerned about first? Right. Like,
yeah.
Like, there's so many at play. I'm like, do I get on a plane? Who do I call? Like, do I book a plane? Like, I'll put $100,000 on my credit cards right now, And it's like, you're just put in this position of helplessness, of your friends are struggling. I mean, you go through that with life, right? When you're blessed to have people you care about, you are, put in situations that feel heavy for everyone's heaviness.
It was very heavy for a long time.
Yeah. And
I remember texting people and being like, I'm about to ruin their day.
I think one thing I would want people to take from this episode is that your burden as someone, like, for someone you care about and care about, like, love, never hold back from that if it's gonna help you, because people want to be there. I mean, like,
people were,
everyone was there. It was just like,
there were so many moments of just feeling so surrounded. Like, I don't know how I walked into the NICU every day. I should not have been able to walk. And I just feel like our village was like carrying me in there. And there's just been some really special moments that happened during that like 3-day time period. I remember I texted you guys all the link to the flight tracker, and everyone was tracking her flight home. And Kyle sent me, my best friend Kyle sent me a picture of my goddaughter Vera, like glued to the phone, watching it. Yeah. And now Logan and Vera have like a very special relationship. And it's just, you know, having all those people in our lives that were there for us. Like, it's the first time I allowed other people to like help me. And I think that's a hard thing too, is being able to ask for help or just allowing yourself to be helped.
I think a situation like that shows that you can't do it yourself.
I couldn't.
I mean, how could anyone? I don't even.
Couldn't.
What? I mean, even just like Joe, right? Like, what would have been done if Joe wasn't there, or if, you know?
Yeah, our friends joke about it. They're like, if that was my husband, we'd still be there. But the other thing is, too, people are like, well, how did you do it? Like, I could have never done that. It's like, we didn't have another choice.
I mean, what's the choice?
There wasn't. Yeah. It was like literally life or death. So we had to do it. We had to make moves. And if we would have had to put all this money on our credit card, that's just what we were going to.
I would have put the money on my credit card for you.
I know. I know. It was midnight. I would have called you, I guess.
Yeah. And it's interesting for me because 2 years later, Leah's pregnant now. And my life is altered by what happened to you, right? Like, Leah and I are leaving the country. When we were talking about leaving, we won't go after, like, we planned it because we won't go after a certain point. Like, it's not saying don't travel. It's being conscious of the, like, medical help around you as well. Right? Yeah.
And what I always say to people is, if you're traveling, like, with your family or pregnant, like, know where the hospital is, know how you would get there, because there was not an ambulance for us. And if you are pregnant, know what level NICU that is available, because we only had level 2. So that wasn't enough for what her needs were. So we had to leave. But if they have a level 3 where you're traveling, you will stay there until the baby's born. So it's just something to consider when people are traveling. And I'm not anti-Babymoon. If I did it again, I would just stay close to my home or before viability.
Yeah.
But if you're going to travel later, like, you need to know what NICUs are available, because you will be there until the baby's discharged.
Yeah. And it's just so hard. You know, any situation, I'm so blessed to be able to be someone that hears so many different stories, good, bad, the ugly, all in between. And every single time, it's just like so shocking to me of the strength that people have to be able to do it. But then it, like, the empath in me thinks about those that don't have people that have to do it, right? Like, what if it was someone that didn't have anyone that could help them? What if they didn't have a Joe? Like, healthcare system alone is, I mean, we work in the, we know, we understand it. So we have a privilege in that way. But Joe even thinking to call XYZ or to call, you know, is just, levels on levels on levels. And then everything that you guys, we didn't like talk about it too much, but everything that you guys went through just to get her, like, birth, like, all of the documents that you needed. The citizenship was
mess.
Months. You had to contact, like, the senator or something.
Yeah,
like,
because they couldn't get in a passport appointment.
Yeah, it's just, there's so many different things that come along with this, and thankfully you were in a situation where you weren't also grieving something that not just a loss, just like a if there was something wrong with her that you had to focus on more. But there's just so many different levels to everything.
Yeah, and I giggle about it now again because we're 2 years past and she's crazy. But it was really, really heavy back then. And being in the NICU is really heavy and it's really hard. And birth trauma is more common than people think. I have a lot of people say, well, I had a crazy birth story, but it's not as crazy as yours. And I'm like, it's not a competition. Your story is valid and it's important. And if it was traumatic for you, that is a traumatic birth story. Like it's not about mine versus yours. They're separate. And so, you know, a lot of people have reached out to me about all the things, and it's been really, really special to be kind of part of that.
Yeah. What's one thing that you hope that a listener or someone listening to this would take away?
So I'll try to keep this not too long, but
make it as long as you want. We got all the time.
So I talk about Jamie a lot, the concierge, but he really was so important in our story, and he's still important. We still talk to him all the time. When he drove me to the airport in his personal vehicle on his day off, we were talking and I was thanking him for everything he did, the birth certificates, driving Joe around town, going to get our stuff from the hotel. And he said, my grandmother raised me and she told me she made sure I always treated people the way I would want to be treated. And that's what I did this week. And I was just like, yeah, you did. And I think, you know, when I hear other people's stories and they reach out to us about stuff, you know, I always say to Joe, like, will it ever not be paralyzing? Will it ever not feel like I'm getting kicked in the stomach every time I hear about a baby in the NICU or a crazy birth story? And he said, you know, it'll always be paralyzing, but if you can help somebody else, that has a purpose. And I just feel like we've really tried to, you know, take our experience and be really open about it. And it's allowed quite a few people to reach out to me and say, you know, I'm really scared. I'm 27 weeks and the doctor told me X, or I have a baby in the NICU, or I have a friend who has a baby in the NICU. They're really struggling. And I give people my number, and like the stories and the friendships that it's created because of me being open about it. I mean, like, what an honor to be somebody that is trusted with your secrets and things that you aren't telling other people because they don't really understand anyways. But to be that person that is like a safe space for somebody when they're going through the worst time in their life has been just really special. And we had the community pour into us when this all happened. Joe's a firefighter. We had our friends and family. I mean, you know, you were part of it. Just everybody like dumping their love onto us. And I just feel like it's our job to pay it back to other people. And it's been really, really special to create really meaningful friendships with common experiences. And it's kind of, you know, it's become our purpose.
Yeah. And this entire project of mine that I've started, it's for people like you, right? Like, it's to connect other people that might be going through something similar, or just needing to have a sounding board, or needing to have, you know, a friend, right? Or like a door to the future. They can see that people can get through this. Like, it's possible to get through and it not completely break you.
Yeah.
And so I'm just really happy and thankful that you know, felt comfortable coming here and sharing it. And I want you to share, you know, where people can find you if you're comfortable, if, you know, someone's listening or someone needs advice or someone just, you know, needs a listening ear. Where can they find you?
So I am an old millennial and I don't have Twitter or anything like that.
It's X. It's not even Twitter anymore.
I don't have TikTok either, but they can find me on Instagram, LOffner24, or Lindsey Offner on Facebook. But I would love anybody who needs help to reach out to me. If you need a friend, if you're scared because you're in the NICU and you don't have, a village, I would love to be that village for somebody.
I love you. I love this. I'm gonna read my outro because I didn't memorize it, and I think that I wouldn't do justice the words that I want to say in the end of things or in the beginning of things. Like I read the intro. Mm-hmm. So I'm gonna bring this over here. And so if you're listening, you're like, why are you reading from something? It's because if I speak from my heart without reading something written
She'll
down,
cry.
I will cry. And I want to make sure I get it out before my eyes have been almost tearing this whole entire time.
Yeah, everyone cries.
Anywho, Lindsey, well, I already said thank you. The strength it took to get through those terrifying moments in the NICU days and everything that followed is really inspiring. Logan's journey is nothing short of a miracle, and the love and determination that you and Joe showed in getting her home. I'm trying not to cry. Getting her home and healthy is something so many parents will relate to. To anyone listening, if you've been through a traumatic birth, if you're in the NICU journey right now, or if you're still processing what happened years later, know that you're not alone. The emotions are real, the fear is valid, but hope exists. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in, and see you all next time on For the Haters.
For the haters, come on, do it now or later. Yeah. It don't matter what your name is, share your story.